good afternoon, wherever you are. My name's Jessica Rowland. I'm the Senior Specialist on Inclusive Peace for the Network for Religious and Traditional Peacemakers. I think I know most of you, but first of all, just to start off, happy International Day of Dialogue Among Civilizations. So we're celebrating and very looking excited to celebrate this day with you today. Today's Inclusivity Community of Practice meeting is focused on innovative approaches to interreligious and interreligious dialogue for peace. So we're very excited to have you here. So just to kind of give you an overview of today's meeting. So first we'll hear from a couple presenters on how they're advancing dialogue at the global level. And then we'll actually turn it to our steering group members to facilitate what an interreligious dialogue actually looks like. So whether you have participated in one or not, you will actually get to participate that in the second half of the meeting. And so hopefully everyone can exchange on some good lessons learned from practicing this in their communities. There will be two breakout groups that you can choose from. So I will open the breakout rooms in the second half, and you can choose which topic you want to do. But there will be one group focusing on countering hate speech, and the other dialogue will be on freedom of religion or belief. So that will be upcoming in the second half. But without further ado, we'll first hear from a couple global presenters. So first, do I have Sarah Durval? Are you here? Maybe not. Okay, that's okay. Well, I'll turn it to our first presenter, Bina Napram, who is the founder and director of Manipur Women Gun Survivors Network and Global Alliance of Indigenous Peoples on Gender Justice and Peace. Bina, I know you want to make a presentation, so I turn it to you.
Greetings, everyone. Mayam Butaram na Okcheri in my indigenous language. Thankful to Jessica and everyone at the network and all the other participants. And thank you so much. Due to another meeting with Indigenous women global leaders, I have to leave early, so my apologies. I look forward to hearing the recordings and continuing to be part of this group as we, on this really beautiful day of International Day of Dialogue Amongst Civilizations, such an important part. So what I am bringing today is the essence of what is Indigenous religion. I was born in a family in Manipur, raised with Indigenous faith, but I studied in a Catholic convent. And then as I went to New Delhi for my higher studies, I took part in an exercise on understanding the Quran. And same thing in New Delhi, I was able to actually sit down with the Buddhist prayers of many of my friends' practices and prayed in many temples, such as the Baha'i temple in New Delhi, where all religion could be, are welcomed in that space. So I feel I'm a child of many religions. So I bring the aspect of indigenous religion, not because I want to go back to the past and drag every one of you out there, but I realize there is something of value that human civilizations have left out in the last 500 years of navigating this world around us. So I understand today is a session on dialogue, so my apologies. I'm bringing some PowerPoints, and the only reason I bring this PowerPoint is to bring you some images and some really beautiful aspects of what I'm sharing, because you may not have read this anywhere. These are very seminal research work done by many of us in our parts of the world. So I wanted to bring home some of the images, and that's why this PowerPoint. So I will, with your kind permission, I will just try to, wait a minute. Okay, the sharing. No, this is not the one. So let me just pull the PowerPoint up. My apologies, almost coming there, almost there. Okay, here we are. Let me go back. So this is the first, this I wanted to share in understanding indigenous religions as a pathway for peaceful existence. I dedicate this presentation to my maternal grandfather, who was a medicine man, a healer, and a spiritual guide. He fought against the exploitation of indigenous peoples of Manipur and was ostracized by the locality because of his stand to protect indigenous faith called Sanamahi, because Hindu faith was imposed under a diktat in Manipur by the king, and those who followed the indigenous faith were imprisoned and punished, which included my grandfather. So I come from a family we have seen this, religious ostracization, and I felt that was not right. Anyway, okay, a little bit of understanding what is indigenous communities and what's happening around. So we found out that 476 million indigenous people live in 90 countries and territories. This is it's the size of the United States. They represent 5,000 cultures and way of life. Indigenous religions, if grouped together, could constitute the world's sixth largest religion. But the fact is, the oldest spiritual traditions on earth are indigenous religions, and they must be understood not as relics of the past, but as essential and living pathways for dialogue among civilization. This is my humble submission today, my presentation, which will share a little bit of what are indigenous religions, where are they practiced, why we need to include them as an important element of dialogue amongst India. And I'll bring three elements from Asia, Africa, and Latin America to share with you. These are regions that I have visited and spent time with, and I've realized how much it is important to understand their ways of life, and then finally to say why it matters to include indigenous religion and indigenous religious freedom. Okay, these are some of the images of indigenous people, and they come from 7 socio-cultural regions of the world. What is fascinating is that in all the 7 socio-cultural regions of the world that I have been interacting with, indigenous people have embraced all religions: Islam, Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism. So indigenous people have embraced all the global religions, you see. So they are a common denominator amongst all the global religions, and hence an important bridge to dialogue among civilizations. What is unique about indigenous cultures is that indigenous religion is that it is not a discrete part of life, that religion, but indigenous religion is integrated with culture as a whole and very closely with nature. And also it's intergeneration. Like we remember our ancestors, we remember children yet to be born. In short, it is a living tradition. Indigenous religion is a living tradition. This is an image from where I am, from Manipur. This is what is critical. Indigenous knowledge and religion is embedded in the oneness of life, considers nature as sacred. We don't own nature. We don't just cut trees in Manipur, for instance. Before we cut a tree, we ask for forgiveness because trees have life too, and acknowledge humanity as a part of it. This indigenous religious tradition, where the Maori, Sami, the Dine, the Mapuche, or in several parts of northeast of India, hold knowledge formed over millions of years. And they teach us about peaceful coexistence with nature and with one another. These are sacred groves in a place in Meghalaya, which is at the Bangladesh-India border. Just to let you know that these sacred sites exist and are part of indigenous religion. I take you to another part of the world, in Maori land in New Zealand. Did you know that the Maori indigenous people fought for 160 years to get legal protection for their river. Why? So a river can file a case against all of us. And why? It's because all human civilizations evolve around rivers, doesn't so the Wangainu River, so they're now this is that beautiful river. And what's happening here? According to the Maori religious traditions, Tupuna, or the ancestors, live in the natural world. And it is the community's duty to protect the landscape they inherited and those who gave. And there's a beautiful Maori saying which says, I am the river and the river is me. So if you pollute the river, if you don't take care of the river, civilizations are affected. So this is something the Maoris have taught me. In Asia, where many of us in this room are coming from, 2/3 of the world's indigenous people live in Asia, around 400 million. And till today, many of them follow the indigenous faith. But I want to ask each one of you here, do you know about these religions? And have you found out where they are and who's practicing them? Because it's really important. I keep telling people that when we talk about indigeneity, it is to remember the forgotten people and communities. It's not to wedge a divide or to separate or to say that, oh, we are better than yours, but it's really important to understand this. I bring from my culture in Manipur, we worship the forests. We have a festival called Umanglai Haraba, means worship of the forest. This is how this is done in my culture. The other thing is not just we worship, but many indigenous religions have text. We have a text called Umang Lon, which is the dialectics of the forest, which connects between indigenous worship of the forest and our spiritual world views. Okay. In many indigenous cultures, I know our oral traditions, but in my home state, Manipur, indigenous religious traditions have been recorded in our manuscripts called the Puyas. So we have it written down. We have, as I mentioned, my own grandfather was a medicine man. And it was him who taught me, because how all of these beliefs needs to be integral part of our worldview. Now I take you to another part of the world, from Asia to Siberia. I have many, many friends from Siberia. The Siberia indigenous people, one of them are called the Saha people. They worship the sun. Saha have strong spiritual connection with the sun. And you know, scientifically, the source of all light of life is also the sun. Without the sun, we don't exist. So this is, again, a very important worldview from Eurasia, from that part of the world in around the Arctic, how indigenous people have practiced their way of life. You may not have heard of the Saha people, but in the war on Ukraine, many indigenous people have been recruited from this region to fight in the war on Ukraine, and many of them are languishing in jail still today. So again, to tell you the connection between how suppression of many indigenous people rights, many religions, many religious people of the Saha community are imprisoned at the moment as we speak for practicing their indigenous faith. We come to Africa. Recently, I worked very closely with the indigenous people in Sudan called the Nuba, from the Nuba Mountains. They are indigenous inhabitants of central Sudan, and they make of 50 indigenous ethnic groups in the region. It is one of the most beautiful parts of Sudan. See how green it is. So the indigenous people of Nuba Mountain have their own religion. And the conception of universe exists, the earth and the heaven, and the visible and the invisible. And they also share a conception of a high spirit of divinity, usually a creator God. And the Nuba Mountain people said, we have eaten from the same plate, all religion in Nuba Mountains. Again, an example of how indigenous people and religions have coexisted. Latin America. I also recently visited Guatemala, where I witnessed the many ceremonies practiced. As you know, in Guatemala, there was a 30-year-old conflict where thousands of people died. But how did the people of Guatemala, bring their peace and their, way of life again because of their belief. I have seen many Mayan people have also embraced different global religions, but they have never forgone their religion and ceremonies because they're integral part of Mayan life. They are woven in the clothing that they wear. It is woven in their ceremonies, and they continued as they go to church. They also in their homes and in their culture, they imbibe their indigenous religion. So I was really impressed. Their deities associated with nature, weather, and crops. Very, very neat. Now, what is happening today, I would like to bring the attention of our gathering here, is that indigenous religions are facing persecution around the world. Many religious minorities, indigenous religions, and communities have suffered discrimination and attacks for practicing their way of life. For example, in Mexico, many indigenous people that I know were imprisoned for just practicing their faith or their faith. Indigenous religions are alive, and not only in their pure form, but with many cultural combinations, as I've shared. So it is really important to understand in the dialogue among civilizations today. My humble and honest appeal is to look into this so that we can continue. In Arunachal Pradesh is the India's northeast border with China. Indigenous Faith Day is celebrated on December 1st to safeguard and promote all indigenous faith across the state. And then today, 80% of global population today face religious persecution, as we know. So we have to, again, indigenous, non-indigenous religious traditions, we have to work together to see how we need, because if spiritualism is at the heart, whichever God you follow, whichever nature you worship, at the heart is that every human being from any culture and religion want peace, stability, dignity, and respect as we go on in our lives. At the moment, several desecration of sacred sites and objects are continuing, and United Nations and many others have been working to ensure that they are protected. We know Article 18 protects the right of freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. We must honor this. And also we have for indigenous people, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, Article 12. Indigenous peoples have the right to develop and teach their religious traditions, customs, and ceremonies. They are not like what the world would call voodoo, or the world will say, oh, they are mumbo jumbo. They don't make sense. No, that is not right. These are very much rooted to connecting with nature. It's time that indigenous people have the right to maintain and protect their privacy to the religious and cultural sites. Last year, we met at the Global Summit on Indigenous Peace Building to talk about many of these as indigenous peace building and healing and spiritual practices to be able to heal people, peace, and planet. These are some of the work done by indigenous leaders from 7 socio-cultural regions in the past 1 year, dedicatedly to be able to do what we need to do. And my last slides are, so what are the recommendations? We need to document, we need to strengthen, we need to make an important part of healing practices, understanding religious practices around the world, to look into gender and indigenous religious freedom and engage with our women and youth, to work both at the global level and at the community level to streamline this and protect many indigenous and also religious defenders of their rights, because many are under attack as we speak. To conclude, I end with this quote by Big Thunder Wabanaki Algonquin. The Great Spirit is in all the things. He is in the air we breathe. The Great Spirit is our Father, but the earth is our mother. She nourishes us. That which we put into the ground, she returns to us. With this, we hope that understanding and respecting indigenous religious practices is not only vital for our survival, it's vital for dialogue among civilizations, and it's a powerful pathway for healing people, of societies in conflict, and of the earth itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Bina. I think this was a wonderful and powerful way of opening this discussion on why interreligious dialogue is so needed and to be inclusive of all spiritual traditions, and showing just how connected we really are. So thank you so much for kicking us off. If anybody has any questions, because Bina did say she does have to leave early, you please put it in the chat, and hopefully she can respond to you. But I want to now pass it to our moderator, I believe Sarah Derval Lafanda, who has joined us, who is the founder and CEO of Hope of Africa, the Southwest Northwest Women Task Force. So, Sarah, I will turn it to you to keep leading us on.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you're coming from. As Jessica said, I'm Sarah Deval, Executive Director of Hope of Africa and General Coordinator Emeritus of Southwest Northwest Women's Task Force. Yes, we know that religious and interreligious is a very delicate topic. And from what we just got from Bina, I mean, it is soothing and it is, as Jessica said, that was the best opening we could ever think of because it just takes us to exactly our conversation. Here I am also with, we say across the globe, religious identity is increasingly manipulated in ways that divide rather than unite. Yet, history and lived experience remind us that faith is also a source of healing, moral courage and reconciliation. I'll say from Cameroon to Sri Lanka, from Nigeria to Myanmar, and the world beyond, we see the urgent need for innovative, inclusive, and intersectional interfaith and interfaith dialogue. So this session comes at a moment where global polarization, violent extremism, mistrust are all in the rise. If we are to counter these forces effectively, faith actors and institutions must be at the center, not the periphery of peace building efforts. So from now on, I would just want us to I would introduce one of our panelists, our colleague, Dr. 1 minute, Dr. Ameliki, Angeliki Ziaka, if I'm not mistaken, I hope I pronounce it correctly.
It's perfect. Thank you very much.
Yes, Dr. Angeliki Ziaka, who is the program executive of interreligious dialogue and cooperation for the World Council of Churches. So, Doc, we have the floor.
Thank you very much. I will try to share a very short, small PowerPoint presentation with you, just to help you to follow. Can you see it? It's okay? What are you seeing?
Yes, we can see it.
Are you seeing the...
Yes, innovative approaches to yeah, we see them, we see it.
Okay, you see it. So my name is Angeliki Ziaka. I'm very happy to be with you today. Thank you very much for the invitation. And I especially thank Jessica Rowland for her kind invitation. I am currently the WCC Program Executive for Interreligious Dialogue and Cooperation, that I have been a professor at the University of Thessaloniki in Greece for the last 20 years at least. My teaching and research focus on interreligious dialogue and the world's religions, the theological and cultural diversity, and the socio-political implementations of the religious discourses. And I'm mainly an expert on Islam, but at the same time, I'm very much engaged with the world religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, and the other Asian religions, let's say. As the person responsible for the Office of Interreligious Dialogue at the World Council of Churches, an office with a long-standing history since the late 1970s, of supporting and responding to the diverse needs of its member churches, around 352 Protestant, Eastern Orthodox, and Oriental Orthodox churches. And with the valuable support of my predecessors and the head of my unit, that is Reverend Kuzipana Luamba, in exploring the breadth and depth of the work carried out so far, I would like now just to present an overview of the key dimensions of the WCC work on interreligious dialogue and cooperation, and then share some thoughts on innovative approaches to interreligious and intra-religious dialogue for peace, and mainly why we need both and why we need to find innovative approaches. First of all, the WCC main areas of action and cooperation can be identified through initiatives related to the publication of the current dialogue journal, issued once a year and dedicated entirely to interreligious dialogue with intra-Christian and interreligious approaches and understanding. Secondly, the almost 50 years intra-Christian cooperation within the ecumenical spirit with the Vatican's dicastery for interreligious dialogue, which includes joint documents, publications, and initiatives concerning interreligious dialogue and meeting other faith communities in their diversity. Third, the co-work with the Ecumenical Institute of Bosé in teaching courses relating to the interreligious dialogue and co-organizing the summer school on interreligious dialogue for youth. Fourth, many numerous parallel communications and engagement with other interreligious bodies and institutions, whether faith-based organizations and other NGOs and world organizations. Fifth, the active collaboration with interfaith partners from different religious traditions around the world. And sixth, the knowledge and promotion of the interreligious work of the WCC member churches. And that is crucial because like this we can understand which churches are involved to interreligious dialogue and which are their examples and paradigms on the field and which are not. And we have to go further to understand why they are not engaged in interreligious dialogue and which are the difficulties within the field that could be local difficulties or difficulties related to ethno-religious matters and not an open spirit toward other religions and also economic and social reasons. The work of the so-called transversal office, the Office of Interreligious Dialogue and Cooperation is a transversal office for interreligious dialogue and cooperation, is validated and to a great extent shaped by the reference group whose 18 members come from various churches, and more recently, for the first time for the WCC, we have also member churches from non-Christian backgrounds, mainly Muslims and Buddhists. In this brief intervention, it is important to highlight the following three key points. First of all, that interreligious dialogue as an ongoing commitment. Interreligious dialogue is a vital and continuous effort for members and churches and religious communities. It serves not only as a theological exercise, but as a means of building mutual understanding and cooperation. This is necessary because the beliefs, practices, and values of other religions are not always well known or even understood. Secondly, there are often exist fear or uncertainty about the limits of such encounters and how to engage respectfully with people of other faiths. So it's a continual procedure to introduce the knowledge about other religions. Secondly, awareness of religious engagement and the need for broader collaboration. Understanding the diverse levels of involvement by religions locally and globally is crucial for evaluating and enhancing interfaith efforts. In this context, it is essential to be aware of the varied actions or inactions of religious families in the field of interreligious engagement, building connections between religious authorities, faith-based organizations, academic institutions, and solidarity groups is imperative. Religious actors and members should be informed about the work, resources, and benefits that these collaborations can offer not only to the religious bodies and families, but also to their wider communities and societies. It is equally important to find effective ways of communicating these initiatives and their outcomes to congregations and stakeholders. And I hope that today we will find some of these effective, who will speak about these effective ways. And finally, from how we have a lot of times to go from theology to practice, interfaith action and interreligious dialogue, I make this distinction, despite the fact that it's not a distinction well understood for all. I use the term interreligious dialogue for the dialogue in academia between religious communities, and I use the word interfaith for the action, for the meeting of the group, for the meeting of the people, mainly on local levels, in local levels. So interfaith action and interreligious dialogue represent a significant shift from abstract theological interpretations to practical, rational engagement. This shift includes a recognition that interpersonal encounters between faith communities are often easier to facilitate than the theological frameworks that attempt to justify them. An acknowledgement that despite lingering complexities in theological rationales, especially within Christianity and other religious traditions, the practical necessity of dialogue is widely accepted. And finally, to find interesting ways to improve communication and partnership with religious authorities from different backgrounds, encouraging innovative approaches to both interreligious and intra-religious dialogue in the pursuit of peace. And with this, I will finish my presentation. I hope that my time is okay. Just saying that we need to find ways to include in these conversations all age spectrum, from youth to the elders and to the middle, let's say, ages, because every one of us carries its own experience that is very valuable. So we have to find ways to show these experiences. And at the same time, this interreligious journey and the innovative way to communicate between the different faith communities could give some hope to the younger generation, because what we are living in our time is especially anxious and unpromising for the young generation. So I do believe that religions, interreligious communications, would help the new generation to find a scope in their lives with respect and beauty. I thank you very much, and I'm very much looking forward to listen to your intervention and thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. As we know, we will go to questions and answers at the end of the presentation. Now, the dialogue is not, this session is not only about traditional form of interfaith dialogue. We are here to explore what innovation also means in the context of peace through religion, and how grassroots religious leaders using digital platforms prevent hate speech, what models exist for intra-religious dialogue, especially where division exists within the same faith. We're also here to explore how can youth, women, and the marginalized voices be central, not tokenized in these efforts. So in that case, in that light, we will now introduce, we'll go to our next presenter, Catherine Mohan, co-founder and executive director, and Alex Sibanye, co-founder and chief technology officer, all from Acquaint. So let us have you all your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sarah. We're very honored to be here and to follow up those wonderful presentations. And thank you, Jessica, for inviting us. We're very happy to be able to share a bit more about Acquaint and our journey and how it relates to building dialogue across different faiths. And so I'll start us out. Alex, thank you for sharing the screen. We have a short presentation. We have just a few slides. So at Acquaint, we believe that deepening human connection across all walks of life is critical for building peace. And today I want to share a bit about how Acquaint helps everyday people become peace builders through volunteering to engage in meaningful conversation, and also how conversations about religion and faith come up in these dialogues. And Alex, maybe you should introduce yourself as well. Alex will be sharing also later in this presentation.
Sure. My name's Alex. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Acquaint, currently located in the U.S., near the city of Seattle. I'm really excited to be here. My background's actually as a software engineer, but I've spent really the last, I don't know, 5 years now immersed in dialogue, and I really love it. I'm still learning. There's so much to learn. I also wanted to shout out to Yehuda as well, who I don't think is going to be part of this presentation because he has other responsibilities. But Yehuda has played a big role in Acquaint over the last few years as well, and we're very grateful for that. But Catherine, you want to take it away?
Yeah, and I second that. Thank you so much, Yehuda. And I forgot to mention I'm also located near Seattle in the United States, where it's bright and early. I think for a lot of people here, it's afternoon or evening. So it's kind of neat to see all the different time zones. So yes, now a little bit more about Acquaint, what it is and what it looks like. So it's a movement to practice and promote human connection everywhere. And we focus on individual agency. Volunteers are stepping up to connect for these meaningful conversations. And from that perspective, everybody in the Acquaint community really has a sense of responsibility to try to have the most meaningful dialogues possible. And we also focus in these dialogues on recognizing our common humanity through these conversations. And it's all one-on-one conversations that take place on Acquaint. And we find that because faith and religion are so integral to people's lives, they often come up in conversation. And we will share some of those stories in a moment here. But first, just a couple notes about the Acquaint platform where people are connecting. So far, we've seen over 20,000 hours of one-on-one dialogue across over 110 countries. And I always love sharing this data point that we collected from our surveys, that 93% of Acquaint volunteers reported feeling an improved view of humanity since joining our platform. And we think that having hope for the future, having hope for peace between people is just very critical in inspiring people to engage in these types of dialogues. And also, we really aim for these dialogues to be, as we said in the beginning, something that everyday people can engage in. And it's sort of just like a conversation you could have anywhere, where you might meet somebody, for example, on the bus, and being able to practice the skills that it takes to connect with anybody who could be from anywhere across generations. One thing Dr. Ziaka said was the importance of connecting across many different age groups and generations. On Acquaint, people can connect as young as 15 to their 90s. So being able to see people connect not only across different cultures and faiths, but also across generations, I think is so important. And yeah, we just have a map here showing some of the different locations that Acquaint volunteers have joined from. Alex, let's go to the next slide. And Alex is going to talk a little bit more about the dialogue design on Acquaint, maybe comparing and contrasting with more traditional dialogue models. And we have a video here. We're not going to play it, but we definitely recommend checking it out, where one of our volunteers, Kingsley, explains how to connect on the Acquaint platform. Maybe we can share a link in the chat in case anybody wants to check that video.
So again, Acquaint is a movement to practice and promote human connection. We're trying to bring as many people as we can into that mission, which is really peace building is very central to that. And our entire platform, which it is an online platform, acquaint.org, where anyone can sign up. We'd love for everyone here to sign up if you're just curious to learn about it or, contribute to this dialogue program. Um, in all of the dialogue design is based around that model where we're trying to bring new people in, give people who have experience in dialogue an opportunity to also contribute. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the design decisions we made. I think this is just scratching the surface. It looks very different, I think, than many dialogue programs. Again, being all one-on-one conversations and online, there's a lot of different, I guess, variables that we can adjust. I think one of the first things that's very different is Acquaint is a very free-form discussion. All participants who are considered volunteers are encouraged to drive the conversation to topics that are meaningful to them. Often this goes to religion. Often this goes to kind of historical or recent current events in their communities where people are really sharing about their perspectives and kind of their situation and beliefs in the world. And so there's no set topic for any of these. I think again we really focus on each participant having the agency to drive the conversation to what they think is important in that moment, and these conversations often end up becoming very deep, which we're going to talk about I think in a bit. It's also they're not facilitated in a traditional sense. Everyone sort of has a responsibility to try to maintain constructive conversations. There's a little more guidance than we give than that, but I think as each participant identifies as a volunteer and an acquainter, they're really making their best effort to make these conversations productive. It's also an ongoing program. In a sense, it's been a single dialogue that's been going on for years. There's a lot of volunteers who have been on the platform since the beginning, and there's some really interesting sort of emergent effects we're seeing from that, where a really stronger identity, volunteers are developing a stronger identity as being part of this community, and sort of sharing that as new volunteers come in and sort of understanding, the importance of trying to make these dialogues productive. It's also, I guess we could say identity agnostic. There's no while a lot of programs may have two specific groups that are really focused on, we all identify as members of this global community. And so there's no, specific identities joining Acquaint. It's open to anyone. I think, like Catherine said, we have volunteers from age 15. I think the oldest volunteer that joined is in 93, maybe. And so people are kind of have their own ability to explore identity on their own terms. It's not kind of central to the dialogue design. And so I think this quote at the bottom kind of describes how Acquaint fits in with other dialogue programs. It's sort of a new layer. The use cases in a specific community or a specific group are very different than a more traditional dialogue program. I think Acquaint can be introduced to a community even when there's not like a specific issue or active conflict that's going on, where one community can kind of participate and explore dialogue, explore identity and values and different topics, even when there's no specific issue that needs to be looked at.
So now we'll talk about some of the stories that we've heard from people who are connecting on Acquaint across all walks of life. And one aspect of the platform is that after two volunteers connect and they engage in one of these meaningful dialogues, they have the option to share a note of reflection and appreciation with each other. And there are thousands of these appreciation notes that have been written, and we often see them, and they're sort of these glimpses into these impactful conversations. And so I have just an example of an appreciation note that I'm going to share, and it was written by one of our volunteers who's in the United States for another volunteer who's in Iran. And he writes, "Connecting with you truly energized my soul. Despite our different backgrounds, age, religion, language, and location, we found common ground in our shared aspirations and hope for humanity. Your question about parenthood sparked a powerful discussion on how we are not always in control. Our dreams for our children often collide with the reality of circumstances beyond our control. We also delved into the layered complexity of power, limited resources, and the ongoing struggles between peoples. I truly believe that if more of us could connect as we did today across different time zones and cultures, the world would finally make progress. Thank you for this inspiring and memorable interaction. And I think that beautifully captures the dynamic that's often present on these conversations. So many different topics that are being discussed about who we are, our identities, and just as individuals, as human beings. And just another note, one of our volunteers wrote about her experience connecting across different religions. And she said, I have seen my Muslim conversation partners as my cousins with whom we share so many values. For many people, I am the first Jew they have ever met, and there is an element of discovery and surprise and closeness by the end of these types of conversations. So a lot of these dialogues on Acquaint are really breaking down barriers. They're opening doors for conversations that might never happen otherwise. And one thing we also find is they're bringing people into the dialogue space who might not have found it if it hadn't been for Acquaint. And I think a lot of times people join for their own personal growth and enrichment. And then that leads to all these amazing opportunities to learn about other people and other communities. Once again, we do have a video here that we're not going to play, but we'll share a link in the chat. I think it's about 4 minutes long, so we don't want to take up too much time, but I think this video is wonderful because you can actually hear volunteers talk about their experience. Alex and I share a bit more about the community as well. So yeah, those are just some stories about the Acquaint conversations connecting on many different topics. Like Alex said, there's no limit to the different topics that volunteers can cover.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the outcomes that we're hoping for from Acquaint, since this does occupy sort of a different layer in terms of peace building approaches. We're very focused on personal transformation and personal growth. I think sometimes we think about self-expansion theory, where when we connect with people different from ourselves, we sort of naturally, when we really meaningfully connect, sort of incorporate more identity elements from different folks, from different perspectives, sort of, kind of approaching a more global identity in a sense, but one where we can just, more quickly relate and connect with other people, of course, while still maintaining our own unique identities. And so a large part of that also is the kind of building the skills to connect with people, whether it's active listening skills or just confidence in connecting with people. I think a lot of people have anxiety around just connecting with new people in general, or people different from ourselves in general right now. And just as an initial first step, being able to have a conversation with a stranger, especially, from maybe a very different culture, is a very big step for many people. And so on Acquaint, we're seeing people from both a very new to the dialogue space to very experienced practitioners sort of take advantage of this opportunity to connect with new people, expand perspectives, challenge their own abilities to listen to very diverse viewpoints and connect with people over them. The hope, and I think getting back to kind of the subtitle, I think, of our presentation is sort of seeding communities with peace builders. The idea with organizations or communities is that a community organization could recruit many people to participate in Acquaint as volunteers, and thus sort of develop a peace building ability or capacity in that community that was greater than before. We know that people who have participated in Acquaint report being much more likely to want to participate in further peace building activities or dialogue activities. I think like 96% of people said after doing Acquaint they would want to participate in more peace building or dialogue activities. And so in essence, this is a great place to start for communities that want to be more resilient, even if they're not really faced with any kind of active situation of conflict. It's really, I think there's an opportunity for everyone to sort of, grow and just really have fun conversations as well. We do partner with different organizations. That we recently had a partnership with a corporation that was recruiting volunteers to participate. I think for corporations or organizations that want to promote inclusivity, I think inclusivity is really a practice, something that we can spend our entire lives focusing on and continuing to get better at. And it's not like a one and done thing. I think a lot of corporations sort of were hoping to just flip a switch and make them inclusive, but of course it's definitely an ongoing thing. And so yeah, and also ripple effects. I think Acquaint volunteers.
Okay, thank you very much for the wonderful presentation so far. I'll encourage us to, we'll be going now to the question and answers, and I want us to be nice, as I'll put it. Our questions should be respectful of all traditions and beliefs. We should know that this space is a safe and it's inclusive space. We should also look at our questions should be solution focused with an eye on practical tools, partnership, and next steps. So let us listen deeply, let us challenge gently, and let's remember that peace starts with the courage to truly hear each other. So I will now open the floor for the questions that we have. I encourage us to also put all the questions in the chat box so we can pick them up and then.
I love what Ermi shared about Seeds of Peace. We'll definitely check out that work. That sounds fantastic.
This is a theological vocabulary, seeds, that we use it also in Christianity, in Buddhism, and many other religions. It is beautiful. And seeds of truth that exist everywhere in every religion. Thank you very much for your presentation. May I have, I will write my question. Thank you.
Some questions. Let's see. Are these volunteers stay with you for a period of time and engage in trainings before engaging in dialogues? That's an awesome question. So yes, with Acquaint, the volunteer experience is ongoing. So volunteers can do as many sessions or as few as they like. We do offer a certificate after volunteering for 10 hours. But a lot of volunteers stay much longer. Like we have a lot of volunteers who've been part of Acquaint for hundreds of sessions, like since the very beginning when we started over 3 years ago. So it is ongoing. And yes, we do have training beforehand. We have onboarding. We have a program where experienced volunteers or mentors train and onboard new people to the community. And we really focus on patience and tolerance and active listening. How do we be the best listeners we can across different beliefs and accents and dialects? And so, yeah, preparing volunteers for the program is a big part of our work. That's a great question. And let's see, how easy is it today to talk about interfaith issues in the U.S. related to geopolitics? Oh, Alex, yeah, I see you put a note there. Do you want to answer that question?
Well, I'm definitely like not more familiar with the U.S. and than like global dialogue. I hear a lot about what's going on in the news, and mostly I think what you hear in the news is quite polarizing, and so there's a lot of issues that are very triggering for folks right now, depending on who you talk to. I think if you agree with somebody, it's easy to talk to them, but it's certainly I think a lot of people are very, very stressed out right now and upset, depending on what you believe.
Yeah. And I think one thing we share with volunteers is talk about something that might be outside of your comfort zone, but not if it makes you too uncomfortable or upset. So And we often say, like, if a topic is triggering or difficult, or you suspect it might be, ask your session partner if they're okay with talking about it. So, I might ask, are you okay talking about migration? Can I ask you your thoughts on this? And if it's something that's meaningful for both people and, not too upsetting, then oftentimes they will go on to have a meaningful conversation, regardless of the topic.
And I think one of the really interesting things is, for me, talking to more people globally has made me feel less polarized locally. And I think just having, perspectives that are not sort of really constantly bombarded with sort of political messages related to the situation or to the local situation is very refreshing. It's really interesting to hear people's political perspectives that on the U.S. that live outside the U.S. Because a lot of times there isn't the same intensity of negative feelings that are kind of here on a lot of those topics. At least that's been my experience.
I'll thank our moderator and our speakers for their great presentations today that shows just how I kind of answering all the questions, the why, the what, the how. So really, really thankful for you all giving opportunities and showcasing how we could advance interreligious dialogue. So now, for those who just joined through the meeting, I'm going to open the breakout rooms where you can choose which dialogue you want to explore. So the first breakout room will be an interreligious dialogue on countering hate speech. And the second breakout room will be an interreligious dialogue exploring freedom of religion or belief. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I hope that you all were dialoguing your hearts out. Yeah, do you want to give any recap? Group 1 on hate speech?
Yes,
Sure.
Anujita will do it.
Yeah, I had the sort of a very hardest responsibility of taking notes of what people are dialoguing. Thank you, everyone. Also, especially the room one who joined and make it more insightful. So we started with a question like, one word about what comes to their mind when they hear hate speech, and lots of people said misunderstanding, intolerance, pandemic, discrimination, also like something spreaded by people who are like infidels, useless, and hopeless. So the misinformation. So these are some few words that people shared, and then also when we talk about the forms of hate speech, people also say it like, it's included various modes, especially something against religious and ethnic minorities, and labeling people from different regions as, powerless people. And then also people also say it like, hate something arousing post. And then also when we talked about some of the successful initiatives or approaches that they have implemented in their countries to counter hate speech, we heard from different countries, especially from Sri Lanka, Nigeria, Scotland, especially in Sri Lanka after pandemic, when there is a hate speech against Islamic people rise, then the young people got together and initiated online dialogues with the young people from different faiths, especially talking about religion and gender, or like different topics to understand about each other's religions and perspective. In Nigeria, especially during the Boko Haram insurgency, like, young people got together and created a platform called Dialogue in 2017, engaged with dialogues and supported the social integration of former Boko Haram leaders who involved in violence. Likewise, in Scotland, hate speech is now, something legally punished, because if someone even used it in the local while they are traveling or using public transport, then that person can be sent out of the buses. And also the police protection also can be received if it is necessary. Likewise, people also shared that IRCK from Kenya also promotes dialogues and public apologies to counter hate speech. And then especially when it's come to government, interfaith ministries are engaging with different religious institutions to promote unity and harmony. And also, Oshan shared some interesting practice where they are using films and art as something to counter hate speech. So these are some of the key points that we discussed when it's come to hate speech. Thank you. I hope I have covered lots of the points. If not, please feel free to write in the chat or share it here. Thank you.
Thank you, group one. How about group two, freedom of religion or belief?
Yes. Hi, everyone. We had a wonderful discussion, and those elements revolved around the concept of freedom of religious and the elements of belief, with a lot of us discussing from around the world and different backgrounds, different perspectives and experiences. We focused on two main questions. What does freedom of tradition and belief mean in your context? And how do we protect this freedom while also promoting inclusive rights-based practices? And we heard from many participants around the world, including India, Ghana, Iraq, Kurdistan, Lebanon, Namibia, and Nigeria, highlighting the challenges that they are facing in promoting freedom of tradition and belief, and including a lot of those societal pressures, discriminatory laws, and violent attacks against minority religious groups, with some participants from Nigeria sharing some really crucial elements of conflict and violence that was ongoing in their communities. There was also a discussion about the need for interfaith dialogue and education and cooperation to promote understanding and respect among different religious communities, as well as the importance of institutionalizing the freedom of tradition, religion, and belief in national frameworks and peace processes. And the last point to share as well is that there is a focus on continuing to further engage, whether it's religious leaders, or recognizing that we in ourselves can be leaders at any time. It can begin when we're youth at any point, and to recognize that ripple effect that we all have in sharing perspectives and possibilities and building peace through dialogue. So I wanted to thank everyone in our group and everyone today for sharing their insights and for coming together and looking into the importance of dialogue on this important day. Thanks, everyone, and may peace be with you. And back to you, Jessica.
Thank you, Yehuda. And on that, I've put a link in the chat if you want to learn more about the International Day for Dialogue Among Civilizations, so you can continue celebrating all over the world today. So I just want to thank all of our speakers, all of our facilitators. I hope everybody enjoyed their interfaith dialogue on the subject that they chose. Just for the next meeting, I hope everyone has a really nice, restful summer. But our next meeting will take place on Monday, September 22nd, where we'll be looking at advancing the inclusion of children in peace building efforts.